Welcome back to the Vitalcast. Last week, I watched a room full of accomplished, capable people become 3 different versions of themselves in under 5 minutes. The exercise was simple. It was 3 chairs in a row. I had them write 3 sentences, each one expressing a different internal narrative and energy. One was reactive, where anxiety and urgency run the show. Another was the shutdown state, where energy collapses into a fog and kind of a defeat. And then the third was the resonant state, feeling grounded and connected to what's possible. One person sat while a witness read each of their partner's sentences out loud. The mover rotated slowly from seat to seat, letting each sentence land fully in their body before the next one was offered. I designed this exercise for a local gathering here in Miami where I live, and that was called Lead with Energy. It was an evening built all around the first energy center that I wrote about in my book I published last year called The Energy Blueprint for Leaders, which I'll link below. And this energy center is the one that governs our most fundamental sense of safety, stability, and belonging. The root. It is the ground that everything else is built on. I wasn't sure how this exercise would be received, but what I witnessed that night really touched me. In the first seat, I heard survival sentences that people had written for themselves, like, my worth depends on how hard I work, or my love and safety are conditioned upon my success. I saw shoulders curled inward, even a few tears, as those limiting beliefs really landed in their bodies. And this wasn't because the sentences themselves were new, but because their nervous systems had been rehearsing those patterns for years, or in most cases, decades. In the second seat, I heard narratives like, I've already failed, or maybe I'm just not built for this. I watched eyes go dull. I felt energy literally collapse. And mind you, these were not strangers to success. This audience was a group of leaders, of founders, of professionals who truly look like they have it all together from the outside. But they were feeling the weight of a story they had been carrying in silence. And then we got to the power of the third seat. The sentences here started with things like, I am, or I have. They weren't these wishes or affirmations from a Pinterest board, but really it was the truest and most expansive thing that each person knew about themselves at their most grounded state. And when those sentences were read aloud, I watched people sit up straighter, their chests open, and faces really soften into a recognition or like a remembering of something that they'd always known, but stopped actually letting themselves feel. This exercise worked because it names the thing that so many of us have wrong about change and about building a life that actually feels like ours. We think it takes years or that we need to earn it. We think that there is some prerequisite of suffering or credentials or perfect clarity before we're allowed to step into the version of ourselves that feels most alive and free. That's certainly been my experience, and I have written and spoken about that a lot. But in that room, people accessed it in minutes. It wasn't because this exercise was magic, but instead because that version of them has always been there. Underneath all of the survival patterns and the sentences that every single one of us learned as children, and the identities that we in turn built around those to keep us safe. That night I clarified this, and I'll do it again here. We are not out to pretend that those first 2 seats don't exist. Life is going to hand us all moments and even long seasons of hardship that will thrust us into the reactivity and the shutdown. We get laid off, our parents die, we get diagnosed with an illness. That anxious grip of, I have to fix this right now, or that heavy, foggy feeling of feel lost and helpless. These are not signs of failure. Those reactions are a nervous system doing what it was designed to do, to keep you safe. But I'll offer this reframe. We're entering this wisdom economy. Technology has made knowledge a commodity. You can get on ChatGPT for any piece of information. But this means that our attunement to ourselves and to our own internal world as a source of wisdom is more important than ever. We need to get comfortable being uncomfortable and recognize our innate emotional fluidity that is like moving between emotional states. We're never stuck in an emotion to the degree that we allow it to move through us. The work is building the capacity to recognize which seat you're sitting in and know in your body that that third one is always available to you. This capacity has a name I recently heard of called vagal authority. It's the ability to lead and communicate from a state of calm, grounded nervous system regulation, which I'd argue is one of the most important leadership skills that anyone can embody these days. It requires that we stay present and connected, even in stressful situations, so that others' nervous systems can co-regulate to our own. It's not about volume or power, which I'd argue are old paradigms of leadership. That's what I left behind in corporate. Instead, it's an authentic, embodied sense of safety that changes how you show up, make decisions, how you lead, and what you're willing to reach for when the familiar path stops fitting. Something I see repeatedly in my work with leaders who feel stuck or quietly sensing the life that they've built doesn't match who they are today or who they're becoming is it's not a strategy problem. It's that their nervous system has been calibrated around survival and those limiting narratives for so long that the idea of something more expansive or more creatively alive feels entirely foreign. It's not because they don't want it, but because their internal operating system hasn't been trained to hold it. And so they stay and they tell themselves, it's fine. I should be grateful in the grind. That was me. Meanwhile, the signal keeps getting louder and louder as they slowly die on the vine. If it's your job that feels soulless and draining like mine did, and yet you have absolutely no idea what else you would do, you're not lost and you're definitely not broken or stuck. Consider perhaps that you've conditioned your safety and security to that job. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who also had the rug pulled out from under me numerous times, getting suddenly laid off from my safe job, that safety sourced from anything outside of ourselves is an illusion. You have an internal operating system, AKA your nervous system, and you have far more influence over it than you've been led to believe. That third seat I named isn't a destination that you arrive at after years of work. It's actually a place of practice. You keep returning to it again and again until your body starts to recognize it as home base. Start there and watch as your capacity to hold the unknown grows. And I promise that with it, so will all of the creative and unforeseen possibilities for your one big, beautiful life. If that landed for you and you're sensing that something in your professional life isn't fitting the way that it used to, I created a free 10-minute quiz. It's called Reclaim Your Leadership Flow. And it's really to help you see where that misalignment of energy actually lives. It takes, as I said, just a few minutes and gives you a felt sense of what's underneath the patterns and some actual tips and practical tools to move through those. So I'm going to link that below. And if you take the quiz and want to go even deeper, for a limited time, I'm offering a handful of complimentary energy meets strategy sessions. These are 30 minutes, one-on-one, built around your quiz results. And it's not a discovery call, it's an actual working session so that you walk away with a felt sense of what's actually underneath the patterns that are draining you and the experience of what opens up when you actually address it. and how to do that. Thanks for listening and continuing to walk with me on this path to a more vital life.